I remember every candle, every cake I ever lit for my mother. But on my last birthday, she didn't even say the words. The fridge light flickered as I opened it, revealing the small chocolate cake I picked up from the bakery near the hospital. It had my name on it, in looping white icing. I'd even asked them to write "Happy Birthday, Rachel," like someone else had thought to do it. But no one had. Emily's laughter echoed from the living room, soft and full of effort. She'd been working on something for over an hour with her art supplies spread across the coffee table. I closed the fridge door slowly, staring at my own reflection on the glossy surface. A year older. No balloons, no dinner, not even a phone call. "Mom?" Emily peeked around the corner, holding something behind her back. I turned, trying to soften my face. "Yeah, baby?" She stepped forward and handed me a folded card, cut unevenly, glitter smeared on the edge, and her handwriting sprawling across the front. "To the strongest woman I know." I opened it carefully. Inside, she had drawn a picture of me and her standing together, both with little crowns, and wrote, "You're the best person I know, even if they forgot today." I felt my breath catch. My throat tightened, and I blinked back the sting behind my eyes. "Emily, this is beautiful." She smiled, a bit shy. "I know it's not much." "It's everything," I whispered, pulling her into a hug. Her warmth grounded me. Her presence reminded me that I wasn't as alone as I felt. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. A message lit up the screen. "Carol, hope your day was fine." That was it. No emojis, no happy birthday, not even my name. I stared at it for a long time. There was a time I'd organize dinners, buy floral centerpieces, and order her favorite lemon chiffon cake just to celebrate her birthdays. I'd send cards weeks ahead, make sure every gift was thoughtful. I remember hand-delivering a pearl necklace when she turned 60. She cried then, not out of love, but because the clasp was too fiddly. And now? Hope your day was fine. I deleted the message without replying. My thumb hovered for a moment. Some old part of me still hesitated, still hoped. But I pressed delete anyway. Mark walked in from the garage, wiping his hands on an old dish towel. "Did someone drop by?" he asked, glancing at the untouched cake. "No," I replied. "Just me, Em, and a very mediocre chocolate cake." He raised an eyebrow, then caught sight of the card. "That's not mediocre. That's museum-worthy." Emily beamed. "Thanks, Mark." He walked over and kissed my temple. "Next year, let's skip this. Go away for the weekend, just the three of us. No family guilt trips, no pretending." I let out a soft laugh, but it cracked halfway. That'd be nice. Silence fell again, gentle but weighted. Emily returned to her spot on the couch, humming as she packed up her markers. I looked at her heart, her innocence, and something clenched inside me. She saw more than she let on. She was 16, not 6. She knew the silence from her grandmother meant something. I placed the card on the mantel above the fireplace, between an old framed picture of me as a kid and a clock that hadn't worked in 2 years. For once, the card didn't feel out of place. "Are we still going to Grandma's party next week?" Emily asked without looking up. "Of course," I said with a smile that didn't quite reach. "We're family, right?" They smiled at me, offered me wine, then turned to my daughter and said, "Sorry, sweetie. There's just no room left." The air smelled of grilled meat and store-bought coleslaw, the kind Carol insisted on buying in bulk. The backyard buzzed with chatter, folding chairs scattered in circles, plastic cups filled to the brim with pink lemonade and too sweet wine. I held Emily's hand as we stepped through the side gate, arriving exactly on time. Like we always did. Not early, not late, just right. But no one looked up. Gerald sat near the grill, poking at sausages with exaggerated concentration, while Karen stood near the drinks table, laughing too loudly at something Sophie had said. Carol turned at the sound of the gate, pausing mid-sentence. Her smile was thin, almost reflexive. "Rachel, she said. Oh, you're here. She leaned in for a quick hug that felt more like a brush with obligation than affection. Then her gaze dropped to Emily. A pause. Her smile faltered. We didn't plan for extra, she said, eyes flicking toward the already filled folding chairs. I blinked. She's not extra, Mom. She's my daughter. Carol's lips pressed into a line. It's just that Sophie invited a few of her friends. We're over capacity. Karen came up behind her, swirling her wine, all fake cheer. Yeah, they've sort of taken over the lounge. Teenagers, you know? I glanced at Emily, who clutched the birthday card she made for Carol. Her fingers gripped it so tightly the edges bent. I can keep her with me, I offered, voice calm but taut. She can sit on my lap. Carol shook her head, tone clipped. That's not appropriate for a teenager. Emily's eyes widened. Then she nodded, silent. She turned and walked back toward the car. I started, but she didn't respond. She'll be fine, Karen said. Let her listen to music or something. It's only a couple hours. I looked at my mother. You knew we were coming. Carol didn't answer. Instead, she turned away, calling over her shoulder, the potato salad's on the table. And that was that. I stood there for 5 full minutes, pretending, smiling at Gerald as he offered me a beer I didn't want, nodding politely to Sophie's friends even as they shoved past me in their crop tops and designer sneakers. No one noticed the ache in my chest, or if they did, they didn't care. Finally, I walked back to the car. Emily was curled up in the passenger seat, headphones in, staring out the window. She didn't move when I got in, just whispered. Was it me? My throat clenched. I looked at her, really looked, and saw the tight line of her mouth, the shimmer in her eyes she didn't want me to see. I reached over, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. No, baby, I said softly. It's never been you. She didn't answer, and I didn't try to fill the silence. That night, after she went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table, fingers trembling as I pulled out a legal pad. I wrote without thinking, letting the ink dig into the paper like it could carve the resentment from my bones. Mortgage payments, property taxes, renovations. All me. I underlined the last line 3 times. They live in my house. They threw a party under my roof and told my daughter she didn't belong. The quiet hum of my laptop filled the dark room. The only light came from the screen, casting pale shadows on the old bills and bank statements spread across the desk. Emily was asleep upstairs. Mark was out of town for work. And I was alone, surrounded by paper trails of a truth I'd ignored for far too long. I clicked open an old email thread, dated 15 years ago. The subject line read, Urgent, Dad's Recovery Plan. Please read. Attached was a scanned mortgage agreement. I remembered the hospital room, the smell of antiseptic, the way Carol had looked at me, not with love, but with expectation. He can't lose the house, she'd said. Not after everything. I had nodded. I was 29, newly divorced, a toddler on my hip, still paying off student loans, but I signed anyway. Co-signed, actually. And then when the job at the hospital stabilized, I started sending payments. Quietly, month after month. No one asked me to, but no one stopped me either. There was a folder marked Home Repairs. I opened it. Receipts stacked back to 2010. New roof, $8,600. Plumbing overhaul, $4,300. New HVAC system, $9,000. Then another, medical. Carol's knee surgery, not covered fully by Medicare. I'd written a check without blinking. I even delivered her to physical therapy twice a week for 2 months. She told the neighbors Gerald had paid for it. A pop of color caught my eye. An old photo tucked into the corner of the drawer. Me and Aunt Linda at my nursing school graduation. Her lipstick too red, her laughter too loud. I heard her voice, plain as day. They expect you to give, not be, sweetheart. Don't ever confuse that. I didn't listen then. I thought giving made me worthy. My phone buzzed. A text from Karen. Karen, sorry again about the space stuff. You know how Mom is. I stared at it for a long time, then typed back, me. She's living in my house. She should know how I am. No reply. I clicked open the deed folder. Scanned copy, notarized. There it was. My name listed as primary owner. Gerald's as secondary. Carol's name? Not on it at all. I read the document again, slower this time. I wasn't just a co-signer. I was the owner. I had been all along. I leaned back, heart pounding. Not with rage, but with something colder. A clarity I hadn't felt in years. Time to make that mean something. I whispered to no one. I picked up my phone again and scrolled to a contact I hadn't called in years. Deborah Chan, legal counsel. The message was short. Let's talk about my legal options. Quietly. Then I turned off the lamp. Let the room return to darkness. They never saw me as a threat, just a wallet with a heartbeat. The waiting room smelled faintly of lemon-scented disinfectant and ambition. Certificates lined the wall behind the receptionist. Harvard, Yale, Stanford Law. But I wasn't impressed. I wasn't here to be dazzled. I was here to take back what I'd quietly given away. Lisa Patel's office was tucked in the back, minimalist but warm. She gestured for me to sit, already flipping through a file with my name on it. She didn't waste time. You're the primary deed holder, she said, adjusting her glasses. No lease agreements with your parents? I shook my head. Nothing in writing. They were supposed to stay a few months after Dad's stroke. That was 8 years ago. And your sister? Lives next door. The property line splits where the old fence used to be. She doesn't pay rent. No formal arrangement either. Lisa scribbled something, then looked up. You don't want a confrontation? God, no. I leaned forward. I want this handled with dignity. No screaming matches, no theatrics, just the truth, delivered properly. She nodded. Then I recommend a 60-day notice under informal tenancy. You're within your rights. Serve by courier, track the delivery. Let the law do the talking. I exhaled. Perfect. By noon, the papers were printed, signed, and sealed in crisp ivory envelopes. Lisa handed them to me gently, like passing something sacred. At the Postal Service Center, the clerk raised an eyebrow at the destination address. Family mail? Something like that, I said. He didn't press. The labels were affixed, the barcodes scanned. 2 envelopes, one to Carol and Gerald, one to Karen. Outside, I lingered beside the drop box, heart beating faster than I wanted to admit. Mark called just then. Did you do it? He asked. They're en route, I said. I didn't hand deliver. That felt wrong. He paused, then said, sometimes distance is the kindest weapon. Thanks, I murmured, for believing I can do this. You already are. When I got home, the house felt unusually still. Emily was out with friends, her bedroom door ajar. I stepped inside and left a sticky note on her mirror in my handwriting. Do not doubt yourself. You deserve space. It wasn't much. But maybe it was everything. The sun dipped below the trees as I stood on the porch, watching the courier van roll away, taking those 2 envelopes into the future. I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel triumph. Just an odd, expansive calm. That night, my phone rang. Karen. I answered, already knowing what was coming. Did you send Mom an eviction notice? She hissed. I let the silence stretch before answering. Number I sent her a reminder of whose roof she's under. They didn't scream. They didn't cry. They laughed, as if the papers were a prank. Karen opened the door like nothing had changed. Her lips stretched into something resembling a smile, but her eyes were sharper than usual, calculating. I stepped inside without a word, my fingers curled around the leather handle of a black binder. The house smelled like lemon-scented polish and denial. They were all waiting in the living room. Carol on her floral armchair, Gerald perched at the edge of the couch like a man ready to pretend this was just a misunderstanding. Karen took her usual position beside the fireplace, arms folded like she was running a board meeting. Carol looked up. "Darling," she said lightly, "was the letter necessary?" I sat down slowly, laying the binder on the coffee table with a gentle thud. "Apparently." "You're overreacting," she continued, her voice sweet as saccharine. "This is still your home, too." Gerald added, "We'll sort this out." "It's just family stuff. Maybe you're stressed. The hospital's been overworking you again, right?" Karen chimed in next, flicking imaginary lint off her blouse. "I just think this whole legal notice thing is a bit theatrical, Rachel. We've always talked things through." "No," I said, letting the words settle like ash. "You've always talked over me." Their faces didn't shift, not even a twitch. The performance was flawless. "Let's sit down and talk like adults," Gerald said gently. I met his eyes. "You erased my daughter from a family table. That's the only theater I recognize now." The room stilled. Even Karen blinked. Carol adjusted a cushion behind her back, then sighed dramatically. "Rachel, this is your house as much as ours." I laughed. Just once. A sound that startled even me. "No, Mom, not as much. You've never paid a cent of the mortgage, or the taxes, or the new roof, or the water heater, or your knee surgery, if I'm being thorough." Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Well, we raised you. That counts for something. That debt was paid when I gave up 10 years of my life to keep you afloat." No one said anything, so I reached forward and flipped open the binder. Neatly organized tabs: mortgage, taxes, renovations, medical expenses, bank transfers, receipts, dates, account numbers. "This," I said softly, "is everything I've paid since 2008. You're welcome to review it." They leaned in, slowly, cautiously, like the pages might bite. Carol flipped one, then another. Gerald peered over her shoulder. Karen squinted at the spreadsheets but said nothing. From the hallway, Aunt Linda emerged, probably eavesdropping the whole time. She didn't speak, just nodded at me once, eyes unreadable. "This," Carol said finally, her voice cracking. "This can't be right." I leaned back in my seat, exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. "It's not just right," I said. "It's legal." The silence in the room was heavy, until Aunt Linda pushed the binder closer and said, "I think Rachel deserves to speak." You could hear a pin drop after that. Even Carol's mouth, which had been flapping like a fish out of water, finally closed. Karen looked down at her lap. Gerald shifted in his seat. No one expected Aunt Linda to say anything. She usually kept to polite comments and offhand jokes, never wading into the thick of family conflict. But now her fingers pressed firmly against the pages of my evidence, and her voice was unwavering. "Let her speak," Linda said again. "For once." I didn't speak right away. There wasn't much left to say, and frankly, I was tired of talking into rooms full of people who had already made up their minds. But when Linda's eyes met mine, I nodded. "This wasn't out of anger," I said slowly. "It was out of necessity. I've spent 15 years trying to be part of a family that treats me like a resource. Not a daughter, not a sister, just an ATM with a smile." Carol scoffed but said nothing. Karen rolled her eyes and stood up, muttering something about needing to pick up Sophie. Gerald looked like he wanted to melt into the upholstery. Linda stayed seated. She turned one of the pages again, running her fingers along the margins. "I knew you helped more than they admitted," she murmured, half to herself. "But this?" I shook my head. "I never wanted thanks. Just respect. Just space for Emily at a table." Linda's lips pressed into a thin line. "And you didn't even get that." I gathered the binder back into my arms and stood. Number I didn't. She followed me to the door. "Wait, Rachel, listen. Can you stay for a minute?" Outside, the June sun was already dipping low, casting golden light across the porch where we sat. She brought out 2 glasses of lemonade, still cool from her fridge. It felt strange, normal, like a moment stolen from a parallel life where things hadn't gone so wrong. Linda sighed and took a sip. You know, your mom wasn't always like this. She was never different with me, I said quietly. At least not that I remember. She always wanted to look like the perfect parent, she said, shaking her head. But she never knew how to act like one. You were easy to take for granted. You never asked for anything. And I still won't. Linda looked over at me sharply. I'm going to speak up, Rachel. If anyone in the family asks, I'll tell them the truth. Every bit of it. My throat tightened. I didn't want to cry. Not now. Not again. But something inside me cracked open. Thank you, I whispered. That means more than you know. Later that evening, I pulled into my driveway and saw the lights on upstairs. Emily was in her room, folding clothes methodically into neat piles on her bed. Her duffel bag sat open on the floor. I leaned against the doorframe, watching her for a moment before I spoke. What are you doing? She looked up. Packing. I thought maybe we'd have to leave. I walked in and sat on the edge of the bed. No, sweetheart. She blinked. Then what's happening? I reached for her hand and squeezed it. We're not moving out, I said firmly. They are. Her face didn't show relief right away. Just quiet disbelief, like she was waiting for the sky to fall. But then she gave a small nod and slowly zipped the bag shut. Not with urgency, but finality. Later that night, as I sat scrolling through emails on the couch, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. The message read, "Rumor is you're taking the house back." Another one followed quickly. "You sure about making enemies in your own bloodline?" I stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed back, "I'm not making enemies. I'm setting boundaries. There's a difference." I didn't wait for a reply. Karen never begged. She negotiated, bullied, sweet-talked. But that morning, she knocked. Alone. The sound came just after 8 a.m., sharp and hesitant. I was still in my robe, sipping lukewarm coffee on the porch. June sunlight slid across the railing in long gold fingers, soft wind nudging the hanging planters. I hadn't expected visitors, but the moment I saw her standing there, no makeup, no smug expression, no Sophie in tow, I knew this wasn't a neighborly drop-in. She clutched her purse like it held more than just her wallet. "Can we talk?" I took another sip of coffee, then gestured to the porch swing. She sat stiffly, like the wood might snap beneath her weight. I didn't sit beside her. I remained standing. Karen looked around, searching for words in the air. It's Mom's whole world, you know. That house, that garden, the neighborhood. You really want to evict her? A bird chirped in the tree above us, indifferent to family drama. I set my mug down. Emily is my whole world, and they erased her without blinking. Karen winced. It wasn't meant like that. It was a miscommunication. Don't, I cut in. Don't rewrite the story now that it's inconvenient. She looked up at me with red-ringed eyes, the kind of tired that no sleep could cure. You know we've been struggling. I'm not asking for sympathy, just time. Maybe 6 more months. Mom and Dad. Gerald's not even working full-time since the stroke, and Sophie's starting senior year. And you didn't ask for permission, I said evenly, when I paid for the roof, the water heater, the kitchen remodel. You didn't blink when I covered Mom's surgery or Dad's ambulance bills. You only came to talk when I finally asked for something back. Her shoulders slumped. I'm here now. Too late. Karen's face crumpled. Actual tears welled up. My older sister, perfect, poised, always in control, was crying. Not for show. Not as strategy, but because the mask she wore for decades had finally cracked. She reached out a hand, but I didn't take it. We're still your family, she said, voice thick. No. My voice was low but steady. Family doesn't choose who gets to sit at the table. For a moment, all I could hear was the wind rustling through the trees and the faint clink of Emily washing dishes inside. Through the window, I caught her glance. Curious, cautious. But she didn't interrupt. She didn't have to. Karen wiped her face with the heel of her palm. If you do this. Her voice wavered. There's no going back. I opened the door behind me and held it wide. Exactly. She didn't move right away. Her eyes searched mine for something. Mercy, maybe. Or nostalgia. Whatever it was, she didn't find it. She stood, smoothing her skirt like she still had dignity left to fix. You used to be the soft one, she said. I still am, I replied. That's why this hurts. She walked down the steps slowly, her heels clicking softly against the wood. No one else came with her. No one waited in a car at the curb. Just Karen, alone in a way she hadn't been since she learned how to stand on my shoulders. I closed the door without watching her leave. Later that afternoon, I found Emily folding laundry again, this time humming softly under her breath. She looked at me and raised an eyebrow. That was Aunt Karen this morning? I nodded. She cry? I paused. Yeah. Emily's eyes didn't widen. She just nodded. Good? I almost laughed, but I didn't, because I understood exactly what she meant. I didn't raise my voice. I raised a document folder, and it did the screaming for me. The room smelled faintly of lemon polish and old books. Lisa Patel's office was lined with shelves that held more knowledge than any courtroom drama I'd ever watched. I sat across from her, hands resting calmly on my lap, even though my heart had been sprinting for days. Lisa looked up from her laptop, her voice cool and precise. This is a formal petition under the local landlord-tenant code. Eviction for unauthorized occupancy. Without lease, without payment. You've got every legal right. I nodded. My palms didn't sweat. My fingers didn't tremble. I picked up the pen and signed on the line that said, Petitioner, Rachel Morgan. The page was white. My name was black. But the weight of that ink, it was everything I'd held back for 15 years. Every ignored birthday, every Thanksgiving where I washed dishes alone, every whispered insult Emily wasn't supposed to hear. It was all there, beneath my name. Lisa slid the folder shut with a satisfying click. We'll file this immediately. You want the notice delivered today? Yes. An hour later, I watched the postman, mid-50s, glasses slipping down his nose, walk toward the house I technically owned. Carol and Gerald weren't home, of course. Maybe they were out shopping, or maybe they thought if they ignored me long enough, I'd disappear. The postman knocked 3 times, waited, then shrugged. Standard protocol, he said, affixing the notice to the door. The tape made a slow tearing sound, like paper resisting its fate. I didn't flinch. I took a photo of it, just in case. The words were all there, printed in no-nonsense legalese. Notice to vacate, pursuant to sections 24.1a and 42.3c of the Tenancy Act. It ended with a date, July 31st. A ticking clock, hung for all to see. My phone rang 15 minutes later. Gerald's name blinked across the screen. I debated ignoring it, but something inside me, stubborn and sharp, told me to answer. Rachel, he said. No hello, just my name like an accusation. This is your last warning. Funny, I said. I was just saying that about you. You can't do this. We're your parents. Parents don't lock their granddaughter out of a living room. They don't live in a house they didn't pay for, then act like they own it. There was a pause. I could hear his breath, short, angry. You want to play hardball? Fine, but don't expect us to roll over. I hung up without replying. Back home, I found Emily in the kitchen, unpacking groceries. She looked at me, lips pursed, eyes searching. Did you do it? I nodded. She exhaled slowly. You okay? I will be. I headed to my office, needing silence. My inbox pinged with a new message. Subject line, bold and aggressive. You started this war. Don't complain when it gets dirty. From Karen. I didn't open it right away, just stared at it. The message itself was nothing new, just a different flavor of what I'd dealt with my entire life. But now I had the law. And the law, unlike family, doesn't play favorites. ChatGPT ja noi, ho ja, ngungia vo kwantam. Now they pretend to be afraid. For me. The first whisper came at the office printer, where gossip always simmered. Amy from HR leaned in like she was offering a cup of concern, but it reeked of spectacle. "Hey, just wanted to check in," she said. "Rough time at home?" I turned, startled. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, then glanced around like she was about to share a state secret. "Someone said your folks might lose their house? Because of some legal thing? People are saying they're old, Rachel." The words landed like dull hammers, not sharp knives. Slow, deliberate destruction. I gave her a tight smile. "They are old. And they are also tenants. I'm just enforcing what's fair." Amy blinked, unsure how to handle the clarity. She mumbled something about deadlines and disappeared down the hall. I tried to shake it off, but by lunchtime, 3 more people approached me, offering sympathy I hadn't asked for, concern I didn't need. One even asked, "Is there a GoFundMe I can donate to? For your parents?" That one nearly made me laugh. Nearly. At the supermarket, the next punch landed. "Rachel?" A woman I vaguely knew from church stood near the frozen peas, phone in hand. Her tone was syrupy sweet. Too practiced. "I just wanted you to know," she said, her eyes wide with fake empathy. "No matter what people say, I know you're a good person. It must be hard, making your mom homeless." I stared at her. She smiled, expecting gratitude for the insult wrapped in civility. "Thanks," I said flatly. "It is hard, especially when strangers weigh in like they know a damn thing." I walked away before she could respond. My cart remained half full. My stomach felt the same. Back home, I found Emily in the living room, her school bag discarded like it had betrayed her. Her eyes were puffy, her mouth set tight. "Someone said you're evicting Grandma," she mumbled. "Said I'll probably end up in foster care next." I dropped my purse and knelt in front of her. "Hey, look at me." She didn't. "Emily, listen. This isn't about kicking anyone out. This is about telling the truth and standing up for ourselves. No one's putting you anywhere. We're not going anywhere." She sniffled, finally meeting my eyes. "Why are they lying?" "Because lying is easier than admitting they were wrong." I hugged her tightly, burying my face in her hair. For the first time in weeks, she hugged me back just as fiercely. That evening, the tide shifted. I was scrolling through Facebook, half expecting another vague post from a cousin about family betrayal or money ruining everything, when I saw Aunt Linda's name pop up. Her post was short, but it sliced through the fog. "Rachel paid for the roof over their heads for 15 years. Don't rewrite history to soothe your shame." It was bold, public, unapologetic. The comment section exploded, some supportive, some furious, but all engaged. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was yelling into a void. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. Karen. I let it ring once, twice. Then I answered. Her voice was venom dressed in silk. "Take that post down. Now." "Which one?" I said, feigning ignorance. "You know damn well which one. Linda's. If this keeps spreading, we will air everything." I leaned back, a bitter smile forming. "Everything like what? That you let your niece cry in a car while you played hostess?" "Go ahead." Silence. Then, "You think this is over?" I ended the call. They could threaten all they wanted. But this time, I had truth and a Facebook post to back me up. It wasn't revenge. It was remembering what it felt like to matter. The documents lay across the dining table in pristine stacks, initials highlighted in yellow, margins crisp. Rachel sat with a red pen in her hand, though she didn't need it. Lisa had said it was ready. Every form notarized, every I dotted, every T crossed. Still, she ran her fingers across the last page, a kind of ritual, like touching a scar that had finally stopped bleeding. Emily stood at the doorway, arms crossed over her hoodie. "Is this it?" she asked quietly. Rachel nodded. "This is it." A few minutes later, they stepped outside. The porch still creaked under their feet. The same porch Carol once used to host book club parties that Rachel funded, where Rachel wasn't even invited. The hydrangeas in the yard, which she had planted, bloomed stubbornly, unaware of the tension swaying in the air. From the side of the porch, Rachel lifted the metal sign. "For sale," bright red letters, unapologetic. She held it for a moment, breathing in, and then, like pressing a final nail into the coffin, staked it into the ground. The sound of metal meeting soil rang out louder than any scream ever could. Emily stared at the sign. "Where will we go?" she whispered. Rachel wrapped an arm around her shoulder. "Anywhere," she said, "as long as it's ours." They stood there for a while, the wind tugging softly at Emily's curls. Across the street, curtains twitched. Curious neighbors peeked out under the guise of evening chores. One woman with a watering can stood frozen, eyes darting between Rachel and the sign. Back inside, Rachel opened her laptop and clicked on the Zoom link. Lisa Patel's face appeared, calm and professional. "I saw the updated images," she said. "The listing's live. Once the paperwork cycles through, you'll be ready for market by the end of the month." "No way they can stop it?" Rachel asked. Lisa shook her head. "Not unless they've got legal ownership, which they don't. You're fully within your rights. You've handled this exactly by the book." Rachel exhaled. "Thank you. For everything." "You don't need to thank me," Lisa said with a small smile. "You did the hard part, deciding to stop being invisible." Rachel closed the laptop. She turned to Emily, who was sitting cross-legged on the couch, watching silently. "I know it's been messy," Rachel said, walking over, brushing a strand of hair behind her daughter's ear. "But this is how we get clean." Emily nodded. Her voice was small but firm. "I want to come with you, wherever it is. You always were." A knock sounded at the door. Not a gentle one. Rachel opened it to find Karen standing on the porch, nostrils flared, lips tight. No makeup, no carefully arranged facade. Just raw fury in high-end yoga pants. "You're really doing this?" Karen asked, gesturing at the sign. "Selling it? This house?" Rachel stepped out slowly, pulling the door half closed behind her. "My house," she said. "My decision." Karen stormed over and yanked the for sale sign out of the grass. Dirt flew. The base clanged against concrete. Rachel didn't flinch. "Touch that again," she said, voice low, steady. "And I'll call the cops. This house listens to me now." Karen stared at her. For a moment, she looked like she might speak, but instead she dropped the sign at Rachel's feet, turned, and walked down the steps without a word. She didn't retreat, but she didn't win either. Rachel knelt, lifted the sign again, and pressed it back into the earth. This time, it stayed. They called a family meeting to clear the air. They didn't know I brought a storm. When I walked into Aunt Linda's house that Sunday, the tension in the air could have cut glass. Everyone was already seated in her narrow living room. Carol and Gerald on the love seat like a portrait of calm. Karen on the armrest, legs crossed and rehearsed. Even a few cousins I hadn't seen in years lingered in the background, their faces tight with curiosity. Only Aunt Linda stood up to greet me, a tired smile on her face. "Thank you for coming, Rachel," she said, her tone neutral, almost forced. I nodded. "Let's not waste time." Carol gave a soft laugh, the kind people use to defuse bombs they don't want to admit they set. "We just thought it would be good to talk. No lawyers, no notices on the door. Just family." I looked at her. "Was Emily family when you told her there was no room for her?" Silence. Even the cousin pretending to scroll through his phone froze. Carol blinked. You're still upset about that? Upset? I repeated, keeping my voice even. Number I'm clear now. Karen jumped in. Okay, this isn't helping. Look, Rachel, we've all said things we didn't mean. It was Sophie's party and— Don't, I interrupted. Don't make this about logistics. You had seats, you had space, you just didn't have grace. Gerald cleared his throat. We're all getting carried away. This house, it's more than walls and paint. It's where we built memories. Where you took your first steps, Rachel? You'd really throw all that away over a miscommunication? I leaned back, exhaling slowly. You're right. The house is full of memories. Like the time I co-signed your mortgage when you were too sick to qualify. Or when I paid for the new roof during storm season so you wouldn't have to live under buckets. Or how I covered the hospital bills when Carol's knee gave out. Their faces didn't change. That stung more than anything. Karen leaned forward. You're tearing this family apart. Over what? A grudge? No, I said, reaching into my bag and pulling out my phone. Over facts. With a swipe, I opened the voice memo and tapped play. The room filled with the distant chatter of a barbecue. Then Carol's unmistakable voice, crisp and dismissive. We didn't plan for extra. Karen chimed in. We're over capacity. Sophie's friends are using the lounge. And finally, the line that burned itself into my chest like acid. She can sit in the car. The room went still, like someone had punched the oxygen out of it. Carol opened her mouth, but nothing came. Gerald looked down at his hands. I didn't know you recorded that. Karen whispered, eyes darting. I didn't know you erased my child in real time, I said coldly. Aunt Linda broke the silence. You said it, Carol. We all heard it. That wasn't a mistake. For a moment, no one moved. Then Gerald stood up. This isn't fair, Rachel. You blindsided us. I rose too. Fair? Was it fair when my daughter sat in the car while you toasted another granddaughter? This is your revenge, then? Karen's voice cracked. You're going to make Mom homeless? I walked to the center of the room, calm and deliberate. This is me choosing peace for my daughter. For once, I'm choosing us. Carol's voice turned brittle. We raised you, Rachel. And now I'm raising Emily not to accept less than she deserves. The silence swelled again. My fingers grazed the door frame as I prepared to leave. I'm selling, I said, my voice unwavering. You have 3 weeks. Pack accordingly. ChatGPT John Noy. Toi Kong Het. I didn't plead. I told the truth and let it echo. The living room was quieter than it had been an hour earlier. The recording had done what years of polite dinners, buried insults, and forced smiles couldn't. It scraped the gloss off the facade. But I wasn't done. I sat back down, opened my laptop, and turned it toward the group. Aunt Linda leaned in, her hands folded in her lap like she was bracing for a storm. The spreadsheet glowed blue on the screen. 15 years, I said calmly. Line by line, no exaggerations, just facts. Column after column detailed the financial lifeline I'd fed into that house. $8,000 for roofing repairs in 2010. $3,200 for Gerald's dental surgery in 2012. $1,500 here. $2,300 there. Always my name. Always marked paid. The final total at the bottom read $124,786. Gerald scoffed. So what? That's what family does. You help? I nodded. Sure, but family also doesn't tell your daughter to wait in the car in 90-degree heat. He looked away. The same man who used to call me his sharp one when I helped him file taxes was now mute in the face of numbers he couldn't refute. From the far corner of the room, a voice rose softly. It was Daniel, my cousin, younger than me by 10 years, rarely involved in family politics. Wait, he said, eyes darting over the screen. You paid for Grandma Carol's knee surgery? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Karen stood suddenly, phone in hand, her voice louder than it needed to be. She's manipulating everyone. You think she didn't plan this? Look at her, turning us into villains for not throwing her a damn parade. Her voice trembled, but it wasn't with grief. It was fear. I met her eyes. I didn't make you look like anything. I just stopped hiding the mirror. Her lips parted like she had a retort, but nothing came. The phone stayed in her hand, frozen in place. I turned to Daniel, then to the others. I didn't come here to divide the family. I came here to stop being the invisible one. Another beat of silence stretched between us. Then Aunt Linda stood. Her back was straight and her eyes sharp, clear. I'm with Rachel, she said, her voice cutting through the tension. This ends now. No one moved. The weight of her words settled into the room like dust over a long-forgotten shelf. For once, Karen had no script to follow. Truth doesn't need to yell. It just needs to stand up. And finally, it did. You always expect yelling. But when they fall, it's quiet. Just eyes that don't meet yours. The second day after the meeting, the silence in Carol's house was nearly unbearable. Karen sat stiffly on the couch, her phone clutched so tightly in her hand it might have cracked. Her mother moved around the kitchen like someone trapped inside a routine she didn't believe in anymore. Gerald, still in his worn cardigan, stared blankly out the living room window. The blinds were drawn halfway, letting stripes of harsh light slash across the carpet. She can't do this, Karen muttered, not for the first time. She can't just take everything and act like she's the victim. Carol didn't reply. She placed a mug of tea on the table and sat beside it without touching it. You're not going to fight back? Karen asked, more accusation than question. Carol's voice was faint. We already lost. That landed like a stone in the center of the room. Karen opened her mouth again, but before she could speak, Gerald slammed his palm against the table. The tea rattled, spilled. This is madness, he barked. I built this family, I paid my dues, and now she's got everyone acting like we're squatters? Carol flinched. The sound echoed through the thin walls and out the open window. Across the street, a neighbor paused her gardening, frozen in mid-trim with her shears hovering over a rose bush. Karen stood quickly, drawing the curtains with a snap. You need to calm down. No, Gerald growled, pacing. You calm down, all of you. You're letting her rewrite everything. I was a good father. No, Dad, Karen said flatly. You were just present. Rachel was the one who held everything up. That silenced even him. An hour later, the doorbell rang. A man in a tidy blazer, clipboard in hand, stepped into the foyer. Hi, I'm Lucas, Rachel's realtor. I'm here to take photos. Carol's eyes widened. Now? Karen moved between him and the hallway. Can you give us a minute? He nodded politely and stepped outside. I'm calling her, Karen said, pulling out her phone again. But Rachel didn't pick up. Instead, her inbox held an email. Subject line, moving timeline and entry notification. The message was brief, businesslike. Just dates and reminders. No warmth, no wiggle room. Karen's hands trembled as she typed out a reply. You'll regret this when they're gone. Then she paused. Her finger hovered over send. Then, with a hiss of frustration, she deleted it and chose a text instead. Short, furious, final. Meanwhile, miles away, Rachel sat beside Emily on a quiet stretch of beach. The sky was wide and blue, the waves steady and forgetful. Emily had taken her shoes off and was digging her toes into the wet sand, humming softly to herself. Rachel checked her phone and saw the notification. A new message from Karen. She didn't open it. Instead, she leaned back on her elbows, gazing at the sea. Behind them, just visible in the distance from their cliffside perch, stood the house. Her house. A crisp white sign still clung to the front lawn. For sale. Rachel smiled faintly. Not a grin. Just a quiet, tired smile that meant something had finally settled. Back at Carol's, Karen stood at the edge of the driveway, keys in hand. Gerald was shouting again inside, though the words no longer had bite. Carol didn't come to the door. Karen didn't say goodbye. She got in the car, slammed the door, and drove away, without looking back. I thought the silence would feel empty, but it felt peaceful. The sun had barely climbed over the rooftops when I woke in our new apartment. Light spilled through the sheer curtains, dancing across cardboard boxes and half-unpacked shelves. The air smelled of fresh paint and cinnamon from the candle Emily insisted we light the night before. The space was smaller, yes. No granite countertops, no sprawling living room. But every inch of it felt like breath. Emily was already awake, kneeling by the front door with a marker and a thick sheet of paper. Her tongue peeked from the corner of her mouth as she concentrated. "What are you up to?" I asked, rubbing sleep from my eyes. She held up the paper like it was treasure. The word "ours" was written in big, clumsy letters, underlined twice. She grinned. "No one gets to say we don't belong here." I smiled, kneeling beside her. Together, we taped it just above the doorknob. In the kitchen, 2 mismatched mugs waited beside a box of tea. We didn't have a coffee machine anymore, or the towering china set that always felt more like decoration than use. But we had a table. Just 4 legs, a smooth wooden top, 2 chairs. That was enough. Later that morning, a knock came at the door. I opened it to find Mark holding a plastic container and wearing that sheepish half-smile of his. "Peace offering," he said. "Carrot cake, with cream cheese frosting. Your favorite, unless you've changed." I stepped aside and let him in. "I haven't changed that much." Emily lit up. "Mark, are you staying for breakfast?" "If I'm invited." "You are," I said. We sat together, the 3 of us, on our small balcony. A chipped flower pot between us held the tiny basil plant Emily had insisted we bring from the old house. Mark raised his paper cup in a toast. To fresh starts and quieter mornings. I touched mine to his. To choosing peace. He looked around. "It's cozy. You did this fast." I glanced at Emily, who was busy licking frosting from her fork. "I didn't win anything, Mark. I just stopped losing." We spent the rest of the morning hanging up frames. Photos of Emily on school trips, selfies of us at the beach, that one blurry shot from her art exhibit. No portraits of Christmas dinners past, no extended family beaming under fake snow. Just us. The mail arrived after lunch. A thick envelope bearing my lawyer's return address. I opened it slowly, heart oddly steady. Inside was the final sale contract. The house had officially closed. My name alone was listed under owner and sole contributor. No one contested. No one could. I stared at the paper, running my fingers over the raised seal. It didn't feel triumphant. Just final. Emily flopped onto the couch beside me, her legs draped across my lap. "So, what now?" I smiled. "Want to pick a place to travel?" Her eyes lit up. "Really?" "Anywhere you want." She sat up straight, thoughtful. Then she said, "Anywhere. As long as we sit at the same table." My throat tightened, and I reached for her hand. Always the same table. Always ours. They once said there was no room for her. I made sure she'll never hear that again. The sun filtered softly through the windows of the little cafe on the corner. Nothing grand, just a quiet place with chipped mugs and the smell of fresh cinnamon rolls lingering in the air. A handwritten sign hung on the glass door. "Reserved, Emily's table." Emily blinked when she saw it. "Is that for me?" I smiled and nodded, holding the door open. Every letter. Inside, the cafe glowed with warmth. A few familiar faces, neighbors from our new building, the kind nurse who'd helped me through my mother's knee recovery years ago, even one of Emily's teachers, were scattered around the table, already holding tiny party hats and paper-wrapped presents. "Surprise," they called, almost shyly. Emily stood still, her eyes wide. They came? I placed a hand on her back. Of course they did. You belong. The waitress, an older woman with a kind smile, brought out a small cake with lavender frosting, just the way Emily liked. On top, spelled in shaky icing, were the words, "You are seen." Emily's mouth trembled. She sat down slowly, then looked around the table one by one, as if making sure she wasn't dreaming. "It's the first time I feel fully seen," she whispered to me. I reached into my bag and pulled out the final gift, wrapped in craft paper, tied with red twine. She opened it gently. It was a leather-bound notebook, blank and waiting. "Write your own stories," I told her. "Don't let anyone else write them for you." She ran her fingers over the cover like it was made of gold. Mark arrived just as the laughter rose around the room. He paused by the doorway, a quiet presence, then stepped inside with a bouquet of sunflowers. He leaned in and kissed my cheek. Not with urgency, just something settled. "You okay?" he asked. I glanced around the table. Every chair was filled. No one had been squeezed out. No one was pretending to care while their eyes darted to their phones. No one brought obligation. They brought presence. I nodded. "Yeah, I am." Later, as we helped Emily unwrap the last of her gifts, I sat back in my chair, letting the joy settle in like the warmth of tea after a long walk in the cold. I wasn't thinking about Carol or Gerald or Karen. I wasn't even thinking about the house. That house was a chapter. This cafe, this table, this was the epilogue. As the room quieted and Mark helped Emily with a stubborn ribbon, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "I heard what you did. I wish I had your courage." I stared at it for a long moment. Then I smiled and slipped the phone into my bag without replying. The past had been loud, filled with door slams and shouted justifications. But this moment, this table, was calm, whole. And she would never again hear the words, "There's no room for you." Because now, the table was hers. Always. What Rachel did wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming space. A space to breathe. A space to belong. And most importantly, a space where her daughter would never again be told, "There's no room for you." She didn't need to raise her voice. She raised her boundaries. She didn't need to humiliate her family in public. She simply made the truth undeniable. The greatest betrayals often come not from enemies, but from the people who were supposed to love you. And when those betrayals pile up quietly, year after year, they can convince you that being invisible is safer. But Rachel shattered that silence with facts, with documents, with a signature that said, "This roof listens to me now." For many readers, this isn't just a story. It's a mirror. How many of us have dimmed our light to keep peace at a table where our name was never really written? How many of us have given money, time, loyalty, only to be told we're overreacting when we ask for respect? This story is a reminder. You are allowed to take back what's yours. Your time, your voice, your place at the table. And if that table was never built for you in the first place, build a new one. For Emily, that table came with cupcakes and clapping. For Rachel, it came with quiet validation, the kind that doesn't need to be shouted across generations. And for us, the readers, it comes with a soft but powerful whisper. You don't have to stay where you're not seen. Let Rachel's journey inspire you to check your own boundaries, to question inherited roles, to speak even when your voice shakes. Because justice may arrive late, but when it does, it stays. Once again, if this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Comment 1 if you felt her pain and stood with her. Comment 2 if you feel the ending left you wanting more justice. Your voice matters, and every voice shared makes these stories matter more.